It's very lovely to be here in Adelaide and presenting. Am I going to present? Yes, okay, what a dreary title. So I presume you're the pessimists, right? The glass half empty sort of people who want to come along to a presentation on marketing in a recession. Well, this is not, I should change it, shouldn't I? Marketing in a recovery would be just so much better. When we first started, when we first wrote this report and started presenting, we were one of the few people who predicted that basically by the time we were presenting, would probably almost be over. The economic data would lag, but it was probably almost over. And today, already now, I mean, Australia has not gone into a recession. America is currently in growth. France and Germany are currently in growth. Maybe even the UK might even come into growth. So there's actually plenty of good news out there. But there's still a lot of important things we can learn from recessions. So let me get on to that. But just where do I come from? I have this fantastic job. I direct the Ehrenberg Bass Centre's about 50 marketing scientists who are working on really interesting, creating fundamental knowledge in marketing and supported by corporations around the world, as mentioned, from everywhere from Coke in Atlanta to British Airways at Terminal 5, the Terminal 5 which is now actually working. What we do is we work largely in Adelaide doing old-fashioned science, really. I mean, really, we don't try to do anything terribly fancy. What we try to do is, classic, the sort of science you learned about in high school, but we do it with marketing data. And there's lots of marketing data out there, and we look for patterns that keep on holding, and we look for conditions that vary those patterns, and so that we can make real predictions, right? The sort of predictions that work, not like the sort of predictions you get from marketing mix models. Yeah, stuff that has long shelf life. And at the end of last year, I hosted a conference at Wharton with Jerry Wind, and we asked people around the world to submit papers to us about law-like patterns that they'd seen in advertising. And it was, I think it was a great success for the conference, and it's ended up with this special issue journal, which has produced 21 watertight laws for intelligent advertising decisions. Well, 21 papers that present law-like things that we really know about advertising, which is, is a significant achievement. That said, it also highlights the huge gaps we have. We practically know nothing about new digital media, and anyone who tells you they do is lying. There's just a lot of experiments going on there. But one of the big findings, and I'll just do a plug for Byron here, who's from Network 10, you're going to be pleased about this, but anyone who reads this journal, one of the big surprising findings, certainly surprising for Jerry, who was originally thinking along the lines that the 30-second TV ad was dead. Well, one of the big findings that we get is that TV is as powerful as it ever was, and is still the absolute, the gorilla when it comes to media. But well, we'll talk a bit more about media later on. Let me tell you about this report about recessions. Our advisory board, we've got advisory boards in the UK, in the US, and here in Australia. Our board said to us, you should publish some more stuff that's on topical things so that you get publicity for the Institute. And then this kindly some subprime mortgage lenders in the United States kindly created a recession for us. And there's nothing so topical that grips the imagination like a recession for business people, right? So we thought, well, maybe we could give some enlightened, data-driven opinion on this, because recessions aren't new. They happen over and over. And let me make a prediction: we're coming out of this one, and therefore we are heading for our next one. There will be another recession. There always are. What we can tell from that chart, though, is just the more recent myths that is popular if you read the business press, the idea that things are getting more volatile, and then we get more recessions now and more ups. Well, look at the chart. We don't. There used to be lots of recessions before. They're pretty much unpredictable. It's not getting worse, but we are going to keep on having them. So we should be able to learn from the past. And so I'm going to talk about 4 areas. Consumer behaviour, what we know about consumer behaviour and what that might lead to in changes as people tighten their belts. Talk about new products and what sort of new products you can launch in tough times, or whether you can. We talk about advertising, which is our theme this afternoon, and we talk about pricing as well. So let me start with consumer behaviour. And just some really big picture. What do we know about how people really buy? Well, one of the biggest things that we know from decades of real observation, not asking people whether they feel that the climate is worse now and whether they think they're going to make changes, but actually observing what they do, is that consumers are astonishingly habitual, right? Extremely regular, with lots of wobble, but very regular. Right? It's like gamblers at a casino. You know that consistently they're going to, over time, lose money. But every night is a bit different. There's like wobble, right? And so it can be very hard to see this pattern, right? Sometimes people buy 3, sometimes people buy 2, sometimes people buy 1. But over time, once you start looking like 6 months or a year, you see that they have a very steady pattern to buy a certain amount of dog food, a certain amount of Wheat Bix, whatever, right? So this probably gives us a really big clue, which says that in down times, most things are going to stay mostly the same. Even though people might want to change their behaviour, in many cases they're not going to. Although we have got some structural things, right? Some people have less money, or particularly if you're in the United States, less credit. You know, those people who are willing to give you $1 million loan even though you're flipping burgers at McDonald's are no longer there. So that structurally impedes your capacity to spend. So we've got those things going on, but that's only some people, right? We've got to get this in perspective. Right? Enormous number of people have still got the same jobs that they had before. In fact, like for an enormous amount of Australians over the last sort of year, 18 months, what have they experienced? Well, the same salaries they had previously, but massively lower interest rates. So they had more money. We should never lose sight of this. It's really easy to get the wrong impression if you read the newspaper. A while back, Qantas announced, didn't they? Qantas announced they were going to cut something like 2,000 jobs, and this made like the front page. Right? 2,000 jobs will be lost over the next 12 months. It's terrible news, moaning, wailing. What would happen if a sector, like the transport aviation sector or any other sector, mining or something other, expanded by 2,000 jobs in a year? Where would that news story feature? Front page? Business page? No page. No page. It's not a story, is it, right? Sectors increase and contract all the time. I mean, typically, Australian economy will put on tens of thousands of new jobs in a year. This is just not news. It's just natural happening, right? Bad news sells newspapers, right? So let's be very careful about getting the wrong sort of impression. The main thing is most people are going to be able to continue to do what they're going to do, right? So we would expect belt tightening to particularly affect non-regular behaviour and the postponement of expensive discretionary items. So, amongst our corporate sponsors, companies like McDonald's and Tesco, actually, the UK is one of the hardest hit, and yet every single one of the UK supermarkets is saying, if this is a recession, we want more of them. It's fabulous, right? They're posting